I'm going to call Grant Robertson.
Mr Chair, I agree with Mr Brownlee. We all want to hear more from Dr David Clark. And the really good news for Mr Brownlee is he's going to get numerous opportunities to hear from Dr David Clark over the coming hours in this House. And I'm sure Jerry Brownlee will hang on every single word that comes from Dr David Clark. Mr Chair, I want to speak to Clause 3 of this bill. That's right. That's my first KPI for the day ticked off on the right clause. And the reason I want to take a call on Clause 3... Sorry, what was that? Oh, so here we go. So Mr Brownlee asked if I know anything about Clause 3. We'll read it out slowly for the Leader of the House. Principal Act amended. Principal Act amended. This Act amends the Kiwisaver Act 2006. That's 4 numbers in a row. You'll recognise the 2, then 2 zeros and a 6. If you put them all together in one, it's 2006. That's Clause 3 of the bill, and there will be the many thousands of New Zealanders hanging off this debate, watching it on television and listening to it on the radio, who will be saying, why is it? Mr Brownlee says, wondering why wasting time. There's only one person in this House who can explain that, and that's Jerry Brownlee, for why it is that he's overseen a piece of legislation coming into this House that retrospectively takes away people's rights, retrospectively takes away $1,000, rips it out of their pocket. Jerry Brownlee can explain that. He's the one wasting the time of New Zealanders and the money of New Zealanders by having us here in this House. So Clause 3, oh yeah, we've been there, Jerry, because we believe in savings, because we believe that actually every New Zealander should have a right to savings. Every New Zealander should have the ability to put something away for the future. Not just Jerry Brownlee's rich mates, but young people, people from low-income backgrounds, they should all have the opportunity. But Jerry Brownlee wants to take that away. He wants to make it so that only the people who can walk in on the first day and say, I can do Kiwisaver off the bat, I know I've got enough money. It's the people who wouldn't have saved before this incentive come in, who Jerry Brownlee doesn't want to have in here. Mr Chair, responding to those interjections, I want to return to Clause 3. There will be people out there watching and listening and wondering why it is that in each bill they'll be glued to this, why in each bill that comes before the House, the Principal Act is named in a clause on its own. Because it does seem a little unusual to have a clause that simply says, this amends the Kiwisaver Act 2006. But the reason that clauses like that are put in legislation is because people will look at an amendment bill like this and say, what are they doing? Why on earth are they putting this measure up? And so it refers you back to the Kiwisaver Act 2006 to enable people to understand what it is that's been amended here. Because you would look at this piece of legislation and you would think, why on earth would someone introduce legislation to take the incentive away from being part of the scheme? Because that's what the Kiwisaver Act 2006 is about. The purpose of this Act is to encourage a long-term savings habit and asset accumulation by individuals who are not, here's the one for Mr Brownlee, in a position to enjoy standards of living in retirement similar to those in pre-retirement. So it's very important to have Clause 3 in the bill because it refers people back to the actual purpose of Kiwisaver. If they were just looking at this amendment bill, they'd be confused. They would think, well, Kiwisaver is a scheme just for people who can afford to get into it. We don't need to have any incentives for people to get into Kiwisaver. And when I was sitting in the budget lockup in a sort of airless room downstairs on Thursday, we read this and we thought, this is ridiculous. This is taking away the incentives that are in the Kiwisaver Act 2006. And then we saw the retrospectivity. Now, why would you make it retrospective? Why would you do that? You do it because you know that this is a good incentive. It's been made retrospective because if they just waited, the government just waited and put this legislation through, thousands of people would sign up to Kiwisaver. Isn't that the point? Isn't that the very point? That the reason they're doing this retrospectively, the government, is because they know this is a good incentive, that it is actually a useful part of the scheme. So Clause 3 amends the Kiwisaver Act 2006 in a way that it actually...
Order. Grant Robertson.
Thank you. In a way that actually, in my opinion, or the bill rather, amends the Kiwisaver Act 2006 in a way that, in my opinion, undermines the purpose. What's that?
There's another brain.
Oh, that Paul Foster Bell, who I have to say would probably look better in Gene Simmons' makeup than he does at the moment. Clearly a long-term fan of glam rock. We can all see that on this side of the House. Actually, to be honest, Mr. Chair, I think Paul Foster Bell's a bit more Gene Pitney than he is Gene Simmons, actually. No, Mr. Foster Bell, if you want to be Richard Simmons, you need to get to the gym a bit more often, okay? That's what he just called me, by the way. Where were we, Mr. Chair, before I was so rudely interrupted? That's right. Clause 3 of the bill.
Clause 3.
Yes, that's right. And as you, by your hand movements, Mr. Chair, indicate, Clause 3 is a very small clause that is about naming the act that has been amended here. And I think it's very important for all members of the House to consider again what the purpose of the Kiwisaver Act 2006 is. Now, when Kiwisaver was brought in, the National Party, they never liked it. They never liked it because it reminded them of an earlier act which actually created a universal, comprehensive, compulsory superannuation scheme that their former leader, Sir Robert Muldoon, came along and pulled apart, which would be worth $285 billion odd today. So that act from the 1970s, that could have been the act that was being amended today, but no, today it's the 2006 Act. And this clause allows us to refer back to the purpose of the Kiwisaver Act. And I got halfway through that before I was interrupted before. The Act aims to increase individuals' well-being and financial independence, particularly in retirement, and to provide retirement benefits. To that end, the Act provides for schemes, Kiwisaver schemes, to facilitate individuals' savings principally through the workplace. An excellent Act with an excellent purpose, thoroughly undermined by this amendment bill today. Undermined by taking away the incentive that has made a huge difference to whether or not people sign up to the scheme. Just today. Why means test it? Jerry Brownlee wants to means test Kiwisaver, ladies and gentlemen. That's what he wants to do. There's only one political party that's tried on means testing of superannuation, and that's the National Party. That was Jerry Brownlee's party. What did you think of that, Mr. Brownlee, when National Means Test went for asset testing? What did you think of that? No, he doesn't want to answer. He doesn't want to answer because it was his party that went down the path of asset testing. It was his party that wanted means testing for superannuation. I stand proudly for a party that has worked hard to give people security and dignity in retirement by introducing the Kiwisaver Act 2006, by starting the Cullen Super Fund, and by keeping superannuation universal. It's members on that side of the House who've got something to answer for when it comes to cutting back. 8 cuts to Kiwisaver, asset testing on superannuation, Sir Robert Muldoon taking away a fund that would have been compulsory super. That's your legacy, Mr. Brownlee. That's the legacy you should get up on your feet and try and defend. Because on this side of the House, we're proud of the Kiwisaver Act 2006. We're proud of the fact that we've given New Zealanders the kind of dignity in retirement that you and your cronies would deny them. That's what this bill's about. This bill's about taking away from ordinary working New Zealanders a little bit of an incentive to get into saving. 500,000 New Zealanders That's what they're budgeting on, 500,000 New Zealanders, taking away that $1,000 for them. And that's the record of a party that doesn't support dignity in retirement for all New Zealanders, that never liked the Kiwisaver scheme and have undermined it from day one that they got into government. And this, Mr Chair, is just the latest step in that path. Amending the Kiwisaver Act 2006 by pulling the rug out from underneath the very thing that allows those from low-income backgrounds to get in. Just today, I got an email in my inbox when I got back from Auckland to tell me, I'll explain to you what they are later, Paul, emails. I got this email from a constituent saying that they had wanted to join Kiwisaver. They were waiting to join Kiwisaver. They just got a job that they thought, a full-time job that would allow them to do this, and now it's ripped away by a government who simply doesn't care enough.
Mr. Chairman.